Hey, it's me, MLB. Here is part 6 of Blood Rampage. Enjoy. For the rest of that day, you went from local shop to local shop, asking about Rampage and putting together your own evidence. And so far, he wasn't sounding threatening at all. If anything, his outbursts were driven by fear or surprise. You were sure that he wasn't the person the media was making him out to be. Bloodthirsty? Hardly. Hardened criminal? In looks only. Worthy of being in the top 10 for dangerous villains? You had your doubts. The more you made inquiries into him, the further you were led to the outskirts of town, and the later in the day it got. There was a part of you that was telling you to call it a night and head home, and another part of you that was convincing you that you'd be fine and you needed to get to the bottom of this mystery. The drive for answers won the battle, and you continued your search, still walking the streets alone at 10 p.m. You'd been hoping that you would bump into Rampage randomly, but there was no sign of him so far, and you suddenly felt very tired. The painkillers must be wearing off because I feel like a bag of rotten tomatoes, you thought as you held your head in hand and continued to walk. Maybe I'll just ask at this last place up ahead and then go home. I can come back tomorrow. Pushing through the ache in your head, you walked to the last place on your mental list and pushed the door open. It was a pub, a supposed villain hangout, and you walked right in like you owned the place, earning yourself a few stares from those inside. Hey, someone called to you. You're at the wrong end of town, missy. Dude, I'm really not in the mood, you thought, as you gave him a sharp look but said nothing, turning your body away from him as you looked for someone that might own the establishment, other than this guy, littered with purple ragged scars. This guy, taking an immediate liking to you, got up and wandered over to see if he could get a little more out of you. Did your date stand you up? He teased, walking up to you with hands in pockets. Pipe down, Darby, she's not interested in you, another person called out to this dude who had walked over, completely uninvited. You still ignored him, looking around for someone who you could talk to that wasn't interested in harassing you. You like to play games, huh? This Darby character asked, taking one hand from his pocket, ready to grab your arm or something. But suddenly another person was there, pushing his way between you and Darby and knocking you out of the way in the process. You were about to give this person a piece of your mind, but as you turned, you saw that the person who had stepped in was none other than your blood Rampage. Rampage! You gasped with surprise as you stumbled back, moving out of his way. I've been looking for you. I wanted to ask you... Leave her alone, Rampage growled at Darby, his face half hardened by his quirk. Well, what? Rocks for brains, Darby taunted. You know, cry me a river and float me off down it. Some snickers came from the group that Darby had been sitting with, and there was a tense silence before you suddenly got a spurt of courage and grabbed for Rampage's hand. I don't care if I get cut by his quirk, I'm getting him and I out of here so I can ask him some more questions. Taking a good hold of his hand, you turned and pulled him swiftly to the door, then out into the night. You weren't sure if Darby was going to try and chase you both, but thankfully he didn't, and you were left to take Rampage away on your own. I have questions, you said over your shoulder to him as you pulled him along. His hand was warm in yours, and excitement at holding hands with him was sending your mind into a spin, so much so that it was an abrupt ending when he yanked his hand from yours and stopped in his tracks. Leave, he said sharply. You need to leave. No, but I want to ask you some things, you replied, turning to face him. He looked frightened in the dim light, and the look on his face meant business. He wasn't giving off those scared vibes like before. What's your name, your real name? You asked straightforwardly. There was no point beating around the bush with him, it just needed to be straight questions to get straight answers. Leave, he repeated. No, I'm not leaving until you give me your name. If you don't leave, I'll force you. By cutting you again, he threatened. I know that you didn't mean to do that, you said back to him, holding your ground firmly. He wavered a little, still wanting you to go away from this area right now. I've done it once, I'll do it again, he said, a little softer this time. Name, you demanded. I'm not leaving until I have a name. He stepped towards you, activating his quirk and raising his arm in a way that told you that he would strike you if you didn't hurry up and go. I don't care if you cut me, it's a small price to pay for your name. Now tell me your name, you demanded, stronger this time. I'll do it, he threatened, stepping towards you. You scrunched your face with determination. Name, then I'll go. He raised his arm higher and stepped within striking range, and you closed your eyes so that you wouldn't see the impact, at least, but you didn't try and defend yourself. He couldn't do it. You were the first person to chase him, in a good way, and in a weird way you believed in him, not in him under his villain name, but him in a person. Ijiro, Kirishima, he finally said, his voice breaking a little as he held his arm up still. Your eyes flew open. Ijiro? You looked up into his face. His chiseled body was heaving from the heavy breathing he was doing, his torso trembling slightly. It had been years since he'd said his real name to anyone. Unable to hold up under the pressure anymore, he dropped his arm to his side, turning, and then ran into the dark, leaving you standing there repeating his name over and over in your head. Now with the name to go off, you too turned and ran in the direction of safety, aiming for the closest bus stop that would take you home. Ijiro Kirishima, I need to look his name up. I'm sure I'll find out everything from before he took the road of villainy. There has to be a reason for him ending up taking this route in life. Determined to see the truth, you made your way back to the house and then set about looking up for everything you could about Ijiro. You were up until 4 a.m, researching everything, and by the time you'd come to the final image search on the internet, you had his life worked out from A to Z. It was plain to see what had happened, and you needed to tell him that it wasn't his fault and that he could change if he wasn't happy living the life that he was living. You didn't care if he still wanted to be a villain. That was the least of your concerns. Now I need to find him again and tell him that I know who he is, what happened, and that I believe in him and it's not his fault. And with that final encouraging thought, you fell asleep. Come on, Yin, you can change him with your main character powers. Use talk no jutsu. See you in the next chapter, guys. Coming tomorrow.